If you have ever asked yourself why nobody in the organization seems to care about what you do in product, but you think it's really important, then the next 40 minutes give you a glimpse of the answer and hopefully helps you to change it.
So let's talk about what everyone is thinking. Another book that makes me feel stupid, I read and I'm not doing anything right. Why should they read from project to product?
Essentially, the book is not at all about telling people that they're doing it wrong. It's just very hard in the day-to-day to connect the dots. That's a fact, right? Because you get always overloaded by work, and it's very hard to break out of that circle. So what we're really just trying in the book is to show people that are working in B2B product companies or still project companies, especially leadership, how the things that they are seeing on a daily basis are connected. And hopefully that helps a lot of people out there to just connect the dots.
Welcome to Untrapping Product Teams. Here we speak things nobody else is talking about. And today I have here the founders of Product Masterclass, Sebastian and Thomas. And beyond being the founders, I know them. So we have been talking about product for more than a year now. They run a magic conference called Just Product in Munich. And they have just released the great book, From Project to Product. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you here. What I really like is you took the time to write a book. Nobody wrote anything about it, the transition from project to product. And I can imagine this took quite a while to write it. But what I want to know is what were the pain points you were trying to solve with this book?
There's a lot of books out there in product that are great books. I mean, you have one out, which I absolutely loved. There's the all-time classics from Marty Kagan, from Teresa Torres. But I think one of the things that we felt was missing a bit was a book that was not only looking at product, but that was looking more holistically at the whole organization. And that is one of the main reasons why we wrote it, because we are looking at it not only from a product perspective, but we are looking at the whole organization and try to help product people to make sense of it and help product leaders to make this transition from project to product. But also to be fair, we actually, so when we started, we didn't really plan on writing a book. So it was a happy accident, like a lot of things you do in life. Because when we started, we just started to dump a couple of ideas around the topic, and then we rewrote them, and it became bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, we were like, oh, that could even be a book. And that's essentially how it all started.
Oh, that's quite an interesting thing. It became a book. It was not the intention. And when you say about helping product leaders make sense of the organization, I do know that you, Sebastian, have more of a technical background, and Thomas is the business guy. So it's a very nice combination to do that. But when you say this, making sense of the organization, what do you mean by that?
I think that's an interesting point, which you say, because we treated product always like from different perspective, right? The Product Masterclass has also 4 coaches, right? One from business, product, tech, and design. And, like Sebastian mentioned, that we started off more or less like a cheat sheet with the book, right? Because we had one big project with the client, right? And we kept referring back to that, to that project where we more or less initially, the core of the book are 7 challenges, which we might, get to talk about. And, in that project, we basically, framed the structure, and we always got back. And I think the 7 challenges, if you look at the book, it's not only looking at product, right? Many product books are, how you do discovery, how you do X, Y, Z. Yeah, it's all inside product. But when you take different perspectives, like we did with that client, we had a much broader view of the organization. And I think that's a little bit, what puts that book a little bit in a different place, because we look holistically on the organization and think, okay, what is, preventing organizations from doing good product management? And often it's not the practices and the templates and the things within product, but it's the surrounding, where the organization or where the product team sits in.
So the surroundings can be the problem. And I can connect to that pretty much. So now thinking about this, can you name like the 3 common or top challenges you continuously see in this world?
I think that's interesting. I think there's a couple of things that we see. I think when product people or engineers notice that something is wrong or that feels wrong in their organization, there's this tendency of, look, we're going to look at what we can do, and then we're going to try to fix it from there. What we see a lot is that especially in product management, leaders look at, all right, so we are not really doing well in discovery. We should do a better job there. And that's a good thing, right? So getting better there, getting out there, talking to customers, that's a good thing. It will not fix everything or the overall problem behind it. And I think one of the things that we need to mention is that we, in the book, look a lot at B2B product companies, because they are a little different from B2C product companies, in the sense that B2C product companies usually have a lot of customers. So they don't really fall into that trap of doing like single projects for single customers. They might have different issues, but they are not doing this usually. So we are looking more at the B2B side, where you don't have, or usually don't have, like a ton of customers that you serve at the same time. And then the question really becomes, what needs to change also outside product management? And one of the things that has to change a whole lot of the times is the way the company segments. So basically, B2B companies, especially when they get started, they tend to serve customers with projects, and what they try to do is they grow this company through projects into a scalable product. And like on the way, they more often than not take these opportunities along the way, where they think, oh yeah, we could get a customer here. It's a completely different branch, industry, completely different size, but yeah, we kind of make it work. And that already starts in sales, not product management. And then if this segmentation in the beginning kind of fails already, then it's mostly the part of the engineers or the product managers to clean it up afterwards. And that's really, really hard to do. So I think this is probably the most common misconception that we see, and also the biggest challenge along the way.
When you look at organizations either have a product mindset, or like what just Sebastian mentioned, like if you have strong customers, and you know that as well, right, from B2B, they always push stuff on your roadmap, right? Because and that's just natural. But if you take a step back and compare the two companies, right? Like the one which has a project mindset, and the other one with a product mindset, it goes through the whole company. It starts with sales, but it's also in product, and it's in engineering. Sebastian mentioned a very important one, right? Segmentation. We found that they think differently about pricing. We see that they think differently about discovery. They think differently about prioritization and about product management, and they think differently about push versus pull in engineering and the configuration. So it's more like if you really look like for the top 3, and I think the top 1 is you have a different mindset, and it goes through the whole organization. Then you can think, okay, like what is most important to change first? And Sebastian, of course, mentioned segmentation has a huge impact, but I would also say for each organization, it's a little bit different, because, the culture and how people do things is always a little bit different.
So I hear the different mindset, I hear the segmentation and the collaboration overall. But then you say, need to start changing something. But the big question, many people listening to this, I'm a product manager. Can I change that? Or do I need somebody else to change?
I think everybody can change something. It's just the realm is different, right? When you just come into an organization and you start off as a product owner, maybe, right? You can do things differently in your team, right? You move up the ladder, maybe you get a senior, you have just a bigger reach, right? And like you always can influence your circle of confidence or your environment. Yeah, of course, the new hire, he or she won't make the CEO change thinking, right? But that's why we like, if you want to change the whole company, I think you need to have a certain seniority. Yeah, you need to be in, C level or CPO or like VP or something like that, depending on the size of the company as well. But everybody can change something. Or Sebastian, what do you think? Of course, everybody has an influence.
I famously said 2 years at the Just Product conference, there's only so much an individual contributor can do. I would say I changed my mind a bit about it, right? So in the direction of what Thomas said. I mean, obviously you can't change the whole company, right? But there's also a way to push the ideas bottom up. And we also see this when working with clients. I mean, there's like two different scenarios. Like either the C-level already wants the change, then it's more of a like top-down kind of thing in the beginning, at least, right? So it always has to be top-down and bottom-up, but it's like a top-down thing in the beginning, at least. But we also work with companies where it's fundamentally a bottom-up approach, where usually someone mid-level leadership says, look, I want to change something out of product management, and then basically there's ways to bubble it up, right? It takes longer. It definitely takes longer, but it's 100% doable.
Circle of influence. I like that. This is getting from being powerless to taking action. So
Yes.
No matter where you are, work there. It will take longer depending on your influence. I connect to these and so on. Maybe what could help those listening is like 1 or 2 examples of how someone drove some change bottom up.
Sebastian, do you have an example in mind? I have one.
Yeah, go for it.
I think last year's conference talk from Sebastian, right? If you are a product manager, right, and you have, typical situations, stakeholder come to you and they request a feature and they know exactly what they need, right? Of course, right? So everybody's been in that situation. And then now it's a question, like you need to raise your negotiation power, we call that, to level up, right? So it's really important that you write down with the stakeholder what's the expectation once the thing is finished. Because if you wrote down the expectation, you cannot lose anymore. Either you developed a great product, a great feature, and everybody loves it, or it went wrong, and next time when the stakeholder comes to you, you can just say like, okay, love your idea, but last time we built it and invested a lot of time into this feature, but what makes us so sure that this time this won't happen, right? And then you drag people into discovery. And that's a natural step then to, make it smaller and iterate on it.
I have another example in mind that also refers to that project to product shift. We had like 2 years. I talked to a product manager, individual contributor, and he said basically, I saw a talk of you and I would love to change something, right? And basically took him, I think, 2 years. But now we are essentially working with the C-level of the company in order to help them with the change. And that is a direct consequence of him basically spreading awareness about the topic. So he was sharing a talk I gave. Then they were sharing the book. Then he got the CTO on board. Then they were basically doing, we have this assessment, this project to product assessment, where you can basically go out there and just see where you are standing. And this is a great tool because it's for free and you can do it. And then you can ask other people in your company to do it that are on the same level. And then you can compare results and see whether there are gaps in there. And that, first of all, creates awareness, first step. And then it also creates alignment and like a space where you can talk about the gaps, because usually what happens in companies, and I'm sure, David, you have seen this also a million times, it's like someone says like, I see it like this. And then the other person says, I see it like this. But there's obviously a gap, but there's no data behind it. There's just like this feeling. And when this is just a feeling and it's very opinionated, then usually you can't really facilitate a discussion around it. But it's just like, yeah, this is my standpoint. This is your standpoint. What are we going to do with this?
Great point. I connect a lot too. Write down the expectations and talk about them. And this is something you can just do it. It's very simple.
Yeah.
Anyone can do it. And the second part is strengthen your opinions. Get something outside. Many people know what is the right thing to do, but sometimes they go directly in a confrontation. And then if you go on a confrontation, you lose it before you start. So it is about having the mindset of helping and helping the others see also what you're seeing. So I like that very much. And now going back to one thing, your book is mainly for B2B. I do agree that many things there would serve other people as well, but the focus is B2B, very clear. And that has been a complaint from many B2B people. I read this book, I cannot do anything here. I have a different challenge and so on. So you are aiming to help them. But then there's one thing. Project versus product. Are they enemies forever? What's your take?
I think we have to make one thing clear, right? So projects are not bad. It seems to be like this swear word in the product community where people say like project and everybody's like, ugh. But like that's not really the point. I mean, I think there's a good reason for projects, first of all. There's certain things that are just projects. So if you look at things like, we have done this in Europe, GDPR. You want to introduce GDPR conformity. I mean, this is hardly it touches the product and things have to change in the product, but you have to do it and then be done with it. So it's like, that's a project. The same with the new accessibility guidelines. But when you look at like a company level, then there's also super successful companies that do projects. I mean, there's consultancies that do projects, very profitable business. They don't scale through technology, but they scale through people. Completely fine. Then there's product companies. They primarily scale through technology, through their product. And these kind of companies usually scale a little better. And this is, I think, what happens then. You have this, all right, we are doing projects, but now we would love to do a product because it scales better. So we become more profitable. And then people start or try to shift. And the issue is not with one or the other, but if you get stuck in the middle and you essentially try to develop a product by building a lot of projects on top of each other. And this is something that we call project stacking. So which looks like typically in B2B like this. So a company builds something, a first version or even a project with a customer, and then afterwards, they think, all right, we might be able to resell that to someone else. And then everybody's like, yeah, that's great. We already have the code. We have it there. And then you sell it to someone else. And this customer goes like, yeah, love it. But I need a tiny, like a tiny thing, like just this tiny thing, right? And then the engineers are like, yeah, that's not tiny. That's like 3 months work. And everybody's like, yeah, but we already sold it. That basically continues and continues and continues. And all of a sudden you have these 20 projects stacked on top of each other. Has nothing to do with a scalable product. And that's where it usually starts.
I asked one important question, like you have a lot of clients and they are very different. And you have a product. How do you draw the line? And he looked at me, said, it's a very simple answer. I never draw the line. So whatever they ask, I will put in the product. If they are paying and happy to pay for it, I will do it. And then he looked at me, but you know, our product has been developed like that for the last 15 years. And now people use only 5% of that because 95% relates to configuration. And then he said, but now I have a problem. I want to change technology, but I can't. Because I can't find people who are willing to do that.
And you know, like that's a perfect example for project, right? If you live in a project world, right? If you run a company on a project basis, you don't need segmentation basically. You know, the client comes, asks for something, you think, okay, how much would that be? Right? So maybe 100 hours, right? And then we just make a price tag on it, make 25%, you know, on top of it and sell it. Right? Because we build to order, right? But
Which
if you do that, if you stack these projects, there's so many interdependencies in the code, right? Maintenance, you need to maintain that special feature for that one client in 3 years down the road as well, right? And that costs you a lot. And that, like now we have like segmentation, we don't segment. And then the pricing part comes because we systematically underprice these custom features because the maintenance and all the stuff which comes down the road, we don't have, like on our estimates in the first place, right? And that's, like the two first things which are totally different in project world versus product world.
That's very interesting. So they're not evil, they're different, but the evil is in between when we stack projects. I get that. But then some people say, I understand this stacking project is bad and I want to move towards product, and they can't. What are many people getting wrong about this transition?
They think it's very easy to begin with. Okay, so we got to look at these companies. I mean, you gave an example, 15 years, and they have been successful until now. And that's usually the biggest problem. I mean, it sounds a bit weird, but that's usually the biggest problem, because up until now, they have been successful. The company grew. They sometimes grew to 100, 150, 200, sometimes even 300 people. They are successful with it. But now, like, this whole thing starts to crumble for different reasons. Maybe you need to shift technologies and you can't find people to do it. But then also, I mean, even if you can't find people to do it, the big question is, can they make sense of this mess of like 95% configuration in the product? You need to change how the company makes decisions in the future. Because, I mean, Thomas mentioned what we call the complexity tax. So basically people not accounting for maintenance, for you have to maintain that feature if you do it for 15 years, like 15 years down the road. So like the initial thing wasn't really profitable at all. But there's also the people, right? So if you have, for instance, a sales department, let's take sales, for instance. They have been very successful selling these projects. And all of a sudden you tell them you can't do this anymore because it will kill us in the long run. They will be looking at you as like, I don't get it. I mean, it's like, we have been bringing in deals for the past 15 years. It always worked. Why should I change? I mean, the engineering department is usually not very hard to convince, to be honest, because they see the mess and they have seen it already 10 years ago. So they are not the ones you need to convince. But obviously, this transition is also something that doesn't happen overnight. And product is always an investment, while projects are usually kind of from a financial perspective, these are essentially things that are not really done in an investment mindset, because it's a cash flow mindset. It's a cash flow management mindset. I sell a project, I have my resources, I add a margin on top. When you do product, you need to invest. And that's a very, very different way of running a company. And that also means that the investment might not pay off in 3 months' time. So that is usually the hardest thing. If you have a CEO and a CFO that are totally on board and they see the necessity to do it, this switch becomes a whole lot easier than doing it otherwise.
Things are contradicting each other, right? The beliefs turn around 180 degrees. What makes you successful in project makes you unsuccessful in product. And and then having this huge complexity, right? People usually don't have the time, as we had in that project, to look at the whole company and see the big picture, right? And I think that's one of the biggest benefits, taking the time, reading the book, see how it's connected actually. You have an issue in engineering, but it might be your pricing strategy or your sales or product management. So it's just the 7 things, the 7 challenges are super interconnected, and that's really hard to see.
What I hear is it will be hard, and it's like founding another organization. But the thing is, you have a running one and you need to change. It's like that video where there's car running and someone starts changing the tires of the car while you're driving that. It's more or less what is happening. And you still want not to crash the car while you're doing that. So you for sure will need support as a here CEO, CFO, but you also need people who have been doing that already, because you need a different mindset. For example, sales, they will feel like, is someone taking my job? Because that's what I have been doing. It's a different job they will have to do. It's a different game. So it will take time. And that's the challenge, that many people get frustrated because they think, oh, okay, shall we just deploy these cool frameworks here and then that's going to be the case? But one thing you mentioned that not everyone is seeing, like, if the company is successful, why should they bother? Maybe they just keep doing the same as they are doing right now, keep bringing them enough money. Maybe they don't want to grow. Maybe they just want that amount of money, and for them is fine. And what I hear between the lines is the short-term thinking and the long-term thinking. They're different, and projects you cash fast.
What we almost always see is that when we talk to people, that a company is very willing to change if there is a pain.
Mm-hmm.
Change doesn't just come about.
Yeah.
It's not that people wake up in the morning and think, let's become a product company.
No.
That's not what's happening. And there's like two levers, essentially. There's one, the pain that sometimes shows because a company becomes less profitable. Sometimes it also shows because they were bought, for instance, by private equity, and they want to grow the company but can't do it in that project mode. And then sometimes it's just that people see a gain out of this. But I have to say, this is more rare. Mm-hmm. So it's like sometimes, for instance, a new CEO comes in and they say, look, I think we can do more. Or a new CPO comes in and they say, I think we can do more. But to be clear, this is the rarer case, right? It happens as well, but pain is always the better motivator. It always is. And I think everybody can see that also in their own lives, right? So, I should exercise twice a week, right? And then you're not doing it, and then your body starts to ache, and then you're like, oh yeah, now I should really exercise because everything is hurting already. And that's the better motivator than if the pain wasn't there to begin with.
And the pain, you like describe it in one sentence, is like one CEO once said, like, we ship more with 10 people. Why can't we ship more with 100 now?
Classic.
And like it perfectly describes the situation which you mentioned before, David, right? When you have like a lot of clients and they have all like their custom built versions and extra features.
It just spoke what nobody is speaking about. You need a trigger to make the change.
Yeah.
So the trigger may be pain, maybe acquisition, something needs to be happening. Because there is this saying, and that's how we think, you don't change a winning team. So if it's running well, we are winning, so why bother?
Yeah.
So you need a trigger. And that's the thing nobody's talking about. We are always saying, let's do product and so on. Well, if it's working, good luck. So you will need a lot of support.
I think it's quite easy actually to detect if you live in such an organization, B2B world where you're stuck in the project mode, is look at your engineering department and what's the rate you, what's the amount of work you spend on product work, and how much is like the maintenance and like all the other stuff, right? And if that's a pretty high percentage, right, then you likely have made a lot of like projects in the past. Yeah, and that's a quite good indicator actually to just look, okay, where do we spend time? Another one is like a step earlier, look on your roadmap and just, trace back where the requests come from. And you will see, like in project organization, it's typically, like very client and, the communication comes from client to sales. Sales hands it over to product or project in that case, and they hand it over to the engineering department, and it's get pushed into the organization. In product organization, the communication tends to turn around 180 degrees, right? You have the product department, you have like engineering design, and they think, okay, how about that? If we build that, can we capture this market, right? Mm-hmm. And you think about that, and then you do discovery, and then you communicate to sales, marketing, okay, we try to capture this one, and we will build that, right? On the roadmap, put it on the roadmap. and then you go out on the market. So it's, 180-degree different in communication flow.
Yes, it's totally different. And I like the part of looking at the roadmap. I keep telling people, when you look at roadmap, it will tell you a lot about the product maturity.
Reflection of your organization, like a mirror.
And now, talking about advice, it's everywhere. So that's what we know. If you open LinkedIn, everyone is telling you what you should be doing. And a lot of people are following such advice. But you have been working with a lot of companies, B2B and so on. And I'm curious about which kind of advice people keep following but are already outdated.
I think in product in general, there's this notion that we have to become strong. We have to go and lead. And there's this notion that everything has to go through product. And I have a bit of a feeling that sometimes people overrate what product can do on its own. Because at the end of the day, it's a function that is right there in the middle and is connected to everything else. I don't feel that we should take responsibility for everything, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, I have to do the segmentation on my own. I have to do also pricing, but I also have to talk with engineering. And then it feels like this is not like a full-time time job, but like a 3 full-time jobs in total sometimes.
In other words, the product manager is not the CEO of the product then.
That they aren't. So I mean, like it sounds very nice. I think it sounds very nice, but I mean, they, like, in my mind, they are not. And that's also why product can not just change this on their own. It's not a matter of I fix my discovery, I fix my prioritization, I build cross-functional teams, and then I'm ready to go. Because this is what everybody is saying you should do. And you should do that, but it's just not going to fix the whole problem. Because you still have, and we have this analogy of the egg organization. So there's this product core. And from a product perspective, you're trying to fix everything in that egg yellow. But there's still like a part of the organization surrounding you that is thinking in projects. And if that is not changing, then you can have your shiny product world, but you are still not moving. You are still not creating value because you have to fight the rest of the organization every step of the way. And I think this is something that people are not talking about because it's also not in their direct sphere of influence. And that's maybe also the reason why we don't talk about this as much. And it's the same with stakeholder management. It's not about telling people to change, but it's about like putting triggers in the organization, like for instance, an assessment where you talk about where are the differences, how we see our organization today, and how can we help each other. And we also a lot of the times tell product people, frame it the other way around. Frame it in the sense, how from a product perspective can we help you be more successful? And then you will see where the gaps are. And then you can start a conversation that is not me from a product perspective telling you from, for instance, sales, who to sell to or how to do your job, because that hardly ever ends up being a good thing.
It's the first time I heard this, like, how can I help you be more successful? I do think that we in product are a little bit selfish. We want everybody to help us. And we don't ask this question, and I think it's a very powerful one.
We always start with that question. If you want to change the organization, if you like take up on Sebastian's analogy, if you want to make the egg white, act differently, you need to, find out what problem you solve for those people, like just for a client, right? Usually we start in workshops, with the question, okay, what do we need to be able to scale? Because that's the thing, what people want, right? Like that's the thing, like what the organization wants, right? Be more scalable. So if we ask the question, okay, what do we need to change in order to be more scalable? It will be a totally different, game than, you as product going to sales, marketing, operations, or somebody else in the company and say, like, I know how we do it differently now.
What do we need to scale? Because many times we talk about scalability. We need to grow. We need to be scaled. But what? So we need to understand exactly where to work on and why it matters, and also choose what not to look at now. We don't need to care about everything all the time.
I think that's a really hard thing, like people apply methodologies which are not, for their situations, right? I think it's super a huge difference between B2B and B2Z, right? And if you work in a good product organization, or if you work in a project organization, right, it's nothing bad about it. But if you recognize that you are more project organization, it's kind of foolish to go to a conference and think you can apply all these fancy methodologies you heard there, right? And that's, like the struggle of many people, right? You hear something, but your day-to-day life is a total different game.
So you can get some inspiration. And what I see, like some teams try forcing frameworks to their scenario. And today what I see that is helpful is like, you look at one framework, you say, I like this part, and this part could help me. And then another framework, maybe that part helps you. So you bring them there and you do what would help you, instead of starting, let's do Scrum better. Let's deploy safe and hope for the best, or something like this.
Hope for the best, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what you can do. All right, so we are getting to the end now, and I want to ask you, like, anything else you want to leave to our audience?
When people read things, like for instance our book or your book, sometimes there is this feeling of I'm doing everything wrong, right? So I think that there's a lot of people out there that look at what you say, like, or this framework, that framework, and what Thomas scratched on, and say, we are doing everything wrong in our organization. And I think one important thing is, every journey is different. Also, every journey of an organization is different, and also tiny steps make a difference in the right direction. I think that was super important for us when we wrote the book. We didn't want to tell people what to do or give them like a framework or complete blueprint of how to change everything, because to be fair, it's not realistic. I mean, the context is always different. I can't tell you 10 steps and everything is going to be all right. If you look at things where people promise you that's exactly how it is, then please distrust it, because that's not how it works. And what we really felt was important to us when we wrote the book was that we gave people a mental model of the problems, how they are connected, a couple of ideas, what we typically do in organizations, and what you can do in your own organization, and first and foremost, language to talk about the issues at hand in a way that it's not offensive to sales or marketing, because let's face it, they're also doing their job. There's like, it's not that they're doing a bad job. Company has been successful so far. So, I mean, acknowledge that, please. To give you language to talk about it in a way that is not offensive, that can help everybody to understand better how you can reach a common goal, scalability. And that is hopefully what people take away from reading the book.
Don't be worried. You're not doing everything wrong. Context matter, the mental model, and acknowledge. Appreciate people. And then you collaborate. That's great, because we tend to perceive some people as evil. And sometimes you mentioned that before, like us versus them, fighting the organization. So tiny steps with the right mental model, you're going to get there.
I think that's also like, like when people, they feel the tension, like when organizations are stuck between project and product, people feel it. There's a lot of tension in the organization, right? And David, I'm sure you know that, right? That there is fighting against each other, against the different departments. And I think, like it's usually organizations struggle through. They struggle a lot. They, they burn out the one or the other leader or something like that, right? Then they exchange people, like new mindset comes in, but it takes a long time, right? And if you feel like you're in such a situation, just read the book. It will help you understand like how is it connected with each other.
I can only agree. The book is very simple to read. It's a small one, I would say. It's your guide
Yeah.
Take it wherever you go, and you're going to find insights there that can help you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, we made it intentionally short because I think it's an incredible complex problem. And if you know, like if you put that in 1,000 pages, nobody would read it. Right? It needs to be lightweight to see the big picture, right?
And I'm pretty convinced that those watching or listening would prefer shorter. And one thing about shorter, that's hard. It's very hard because you need to choose what not to put there. Sure, shorter is not easier. Actually, it's harder. It's easy to load people with content there and say, yeah, get the signs from all of the noise I threw to your face. That's not what you did. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
So for those who would like to connect with you, where should they best reach out?
I mean, LinkedIn is always a good place to start. You can find us there. Just type in the names. Otherwise, you can also check us out at product-masterclass.com. Or you can just like search, I don't know if this is like with audio, but like the book is called From Project to Product Mode. Read through it. Let us also know what you think. I mean, at the end of the day, we are using the book to share what we have learned, but there's also people that have other experiences, and we are always very happy when people get in touch and share their learnings with us as well, because then maybe at some point we can also write a second version of the book.
I will share all the links. So you're going to find the book, going to find LinkedIn and so on. Also going to find the link of Just Product Conference, which I truly recommend you attending. So don't miss that out. And thanks for listening or watching. Let's keep rocking the product road together.
Thank you so much, David.
Thanks, David, for having us. It was a pleasure.
Welcome.